his or her name in the permanent vote, in the voters register itself, and also provide his or her phone number for purposes of forensic questions. So, if, for instance, one single individual complains 20 in 20 places and he gets to the collation center, there is no way the collation officer will allow you to pass. So the point we are making is that we are not going to have any separate incident form that any person who has challenge with his or her biometrics will be required to provide his or her additional thumbprints in the voters register and provide a phone number.
All right, let me ask Mr. Onyekpere, do those views, do they address the concerns that you have?
Verily speaking, they do not address the concerns. If you recall what happened in 2015, you had close to 13 million votes that passed through incidence forms, and those were quite fundamental as to determine who won the presidency or not. Now, the smart card reader is an innovation, agreed. The Supreme Court said so. But the focus and central question is, if the officials of the commission organizing elections deliberately or not deliberately decide not to use the card reader, okay, and go through the manual process, you know the manual process is associated with a lot of challenges. And that's why everybody wanted to get away from it. And that's why even in the amendment of the Electoral Act, which the president refused to sign, there were clear provisions that you must use a card reader. If you can't, if it's not working, you get a backup. If the backup is not working, you postpone for 24 hours or 48 hours and organize elections. So if perchance some officials of INEC or whoever is the person presiding should decide not to use that card reader and goes manual with all the challenges, if it comes to court, the fact that the card reader was not used cannot invalidate that election in accordance with Section 132(8)(2) of the Electoral Act. So the benefit of that innovation, which the Supreme Court and everybody had clapped for in 2015, will no longer be realized. So these are like the second best option. What is explaining is the second best option in terms of, oh, the card reader can fail. If it fails, therefore, we now use this. And bearing in mind that that process, which is manual, can be subject to manipulation. So a lot of people who want to rig the elections can still manipulate and refuse to use the card reader, since it will not invalidate the election at the end of the day if it goes before the tribunal. So that is the fear and the challenge. So the issue should have been, we should have borrowed the leaf. That is called the mischief interpretation, or even the mischief rule when you are making a legislation. If they say this is the mischief in existing law, the legislature is bound to make new provisions which suppresses that mischief and advances a remedy so that society can make progress. What did we learn from 2015 if we are still talking about this convoluted manual process of going up and down, which can be subject to manipulation? And if it is manipulated, unfortunately, the courts may not go ahead to say, because you didn't use the biometrics, because you didn't use the card reader, therefore the election will be invalid. So that is a real fear.
But what about Section 160 sub 1 of 1999 Constitution, which empowers INEC to determine the voting procedure and then their independence? So if they insist that, look, if they rely on this portion of the law and say, listen, we are coming up with this card reader, this is part of our guidelines, will that not be validated in law?
No, the guidelines, Section 138(2) of the Electoral Act is clear that the guidelines that merely refusing by an act of omission to follow those guidelines or manuals or directives of INEC, okay, if not following them is not contrary to the clear provisions of the Electoral Act, you cannot use that as a ground to go to court to ask that the election be invalidated. All right? I'm just saying, yes, INEC under the Electoral Act as amended can use any method or procedure they think fit to organize elections. But at the end of the day, if there is a challenge between what you should have gotten by the card reader and what you did by a manual process, which one takes precedence? So the manual process or the manual card and everything is already stated in the Electoral Act. So this one is a general power that INEC has use any procedure. That procedure should have been clearly stated in the law to say, follow this procedure. If you don't follow it, it becomes a ground for invalidating the election. It becomes a ground upon which a person can present a petition. So yes, those powers are there, but it has not gotten to the stage where the exercise of those powers will be a ground for saying an election was not in substantial compliance with the provisions of the Act. That's the point I'm making.
Mr. Okoye, that question, which one takes precedence, again arises, the manual or the card accreditation. He has said it that the way it is now, no one can, there's no legal basis for even that directive by INEC or that guideline by INEC to use the card reader for accreditation.
That's for Mr. Okoye, right?
Yeah, Mr. Okoye. Okay, so Mr. Onyekpere, in this kind of situation where INEC is still insisting that they will not do anything manual, it has to be the card reader. And if you get there and there's a problem, they'll start the process all over again. There, you ask you to thumbprint in the register for the purposes of, how do you say that, forensics later on. Do you think there's a way out of this situation?
No, it's already late. There's no way out, considering that the amendment to the Electoral Act did not sell through. And the fear, which maybe the opposition or some people have, is that some people may deliberately put the card reader aside and decide to go out of their way and use the manual process. And it's been shown that that manual process can be subject to abuse and manipulation. And so if at the end of the day they go through, and what they have done, if you look at the Electoral Act, they may not have violated the Electoral Act as presently constituted. So it becomes more difficult for it to be used as a ground of appeal. You know, the idea of biometrics is to make sure that nobody is playing games, that you are the owner of the card, that your finger points and everything you said matches technically with what is there, so that it can be said that 95 to 99%, we are sure you are the real voter, you only voted once, you didn't vote twice. But these things will still be subject to manipulation if we fall back on the manual process. I think we also have to talk about this new polling units or voting point settlements that INEC is intending to...
Mr. Before we get to talking about the VSPs, let's get back to Mr. Okoye. Let him respond to that bit about which takes precedent, the manual or the card accreditation in a legal situation where you have to say this election was...
Let me just explain something. Now some of the issues that my learned colleague is explaining are issues that arose from the 2015 elections. The Independent National Electoral Commission has conducted several off-season elections from 2015 till now. This whole issue about biometrics was not a big issue in Ekiti. It was not a big issue in during those elections. And it was not a big issue in those elections. This is because the Independent National Electoral Commission has looked at these processes, looked at the smart card reader, taken on board some of the criticisms that we have vested from the 2015 elections, and improved on the regime of the smart card reader. So the smart card reader is faster, is able to read the biometrics much better now. And one other thing you must know is that it is now very, very difficult, or even next to impossibility for anybody to manipulate the smart card reader, because the smart card reader takes its data from the network. So the smart card reader opens at a particular time, gives its own date, and then shuts down at a particular time, and only the resident electoral commissioner or an electoral officer can order for the reopening of the smart card reader after 8 p.m. in the night. So the whole issue about the place of the smart card reader and some of these challenges we had in 2015 is now a thing of the past. It's no longer a big issue. In the Osun and Ekiti elections, this issue of the smart card reader unable to read the biometrics was reduced to less than 1%. And we have also further improved on the regime of the smart card reader. And I can assure you that during the 2019 elections, this whole issue of the smart card reader unable to read people's biometrics will be reduced to the barest minimum. And we have taken that on board.
Mr. Okoye, but the concerns that Mr. Onyekpere is raising here, is there no grounds for such concerns? I mean, he said here, some people might deliberately decide to put aside the card reader and go manual. And you've just said here now that it's only an electoral officer can give give instructions to the card reader to open beyond 8 p.m. What if the INEC official has been compromised?
You see, let me just say this. The political parties must do their work. The law, as of today, mandates every political party that is fielding candidates in any election to send a party agent to each polling unit. So, if there are 73 party agents in a polling unit, and those 73 party agents connive with a presiding officer, the 73 connive with all the police officers in that particular unit, and that unanimity of connivance among every individual in the polling unit. There is nothing any national commissioner can do about it. The essence of having party agents at the polling unit is for them to make sure that the presiding officer does what is right. The essence of having police officers and other security agencies at the polling unit is to make sure that people who are supposed to do the right thing do the right thing. So, for the card reader to be put aside, there must be high-level connivance among every person in a particular polling unit for that to happen. And we do not expect that to happen. And we have made it very clear to all the presiding officers that will be deployed that if any of them attempt to manipulate or connive with any political party or any party agent or any politician or any candidate to manipulate the electoral process, that the person will be proceeded against and prosecuted in a court of law. So we have taken some of these things on board. And my appeal is that the ultimate success of any election depends ultimately on the vigilance of the voters. The people must take ownership of the electoral process by making sure that all agencies that will be involved in this particular election do their work in accordance with the law. If we are vigilant, nobody can manipulate the process, and the process will become seamless.
Well, we'll come back to you in just a moment. There are some other concerns that have been raised about some of those settlements, but just give us a moment. We'll be back.